Imagine telling an AI, build a healthy meal plan for me and order the groceries. And it goes off on its own, researching recipes, checking prices, and placing the order. No more prompts needed. This sounds like science fiction, but it's the promise of the new wave of autonomous AI agents. Unlike a one-shot chatbot, these agents sense their environment, websites, APIs, sensors, think through a plan using a large language model like GPT-4, and act repeatedly towards a goal. They loop, observe, plan, act, repeat, learning from each outcome. Early demos went viral. Agents claim to research and write reports, or even craft a business plan, entirely on their own. But do they really work? And what can we expect by 2025? This is Zach, and you're watching Patchnotes. Quick shout out to the team behind the shoot, Video Deck. They're the folks who wrote, shot, and produced this whole thing. So if your company's trying to explain anything remotely complex or create stunning product demos, hit them up at videodeck.co. So let's start with the basics. Autonomous AI agents are more than just fancy chatbots. They're like independent problem solvers. You give them a high-level goal, say plan my weekend or optimize a piece of code, and instead of waiting for your next prompt, they figure the steps out themselves. Unlike traditional chatbots that respond one question at a time and then stop, these agents proactively decide what to do next. They plan, they execute, and they adapt, all without you holding their hand. It's less like issuing commands to a tool and more like collaborating with an assistant who knows how to take initiative. So how do they actually do that? It all comes down to something called the sense, think, act loop. Here's how it works. First, the agent senses its environment. That might mean reading data from the web, pinging an API, or pulling info from a local file. Next, it thinks, usually with the help from a large language model like GPT-4. It breaks the problem down into smaller tasks and decides on the best next move. Then it acts. It might call an API, run a line of code, or send an email. After that, it looks at the result, updates its plan, and goes again. Sense, think, act. On repeat. It's a continuous feedback loop, and that's what makes agents fundamentally different from a chatbot that just gives you one answer and calls it a day. How AI agents work. The technology. At the center of every autonomous agent is a large language model, usually GPT-4. Think of it as the agent's brain. You start by giving it two prompts. One sets its role, you are an autonomous assistant with tools, and the other tells it what you want done. The model responds with a plan and a command, like search the web for X, or write a Python script that does Y. Then the controller, the code behind the scenes, executes that command. It might hit an API, run a script, or scrape data. The results get passed back to the model, and that loop continues. Sense, plan, act, repeat. To stay on track, agents need memory. Short-term memory is usually the recent chat history, enough to remember what it did last. Long-term memory, like vector databases, helps recall info over longer sessions. Though in practice, a lot of early projects found vector memory more hassle than help. The real magic happens when agents are connected to tools. These let the model do more than just chat. Now it can run code, call APIs, access databases, even trigger devices. Frameworks like LangChain and AutoGen make all that plug and play. But acting alone isn't enough. Agents also need to plan. Instead of just reacting, agents can think ahead. They might take a goal like launch a website and break it into smaller tasks. Baby AGI did this by spinning up 3 mini agents. One to execute, one to create new tasks, and one to prioritize them. Most modern agents use chain of thought prompting, basically the model that thinks out loud, then acts. Some use plan and execute model. Draft the full strategy first, then work through it. Others try tree of thought, which explores multiple options before choosing the best. So what does this actually look like? Take AutoGPT, which blew up in early 2023. You'd give it a goal, like find the best CRM for a small business, and it would start looping. GPT-4 would propose a step, AutoGPT would run it, and then feed the result back to GPT-4 to figure out the next move. It kept a rolling memory of what it had done and optionally stored long-term notes in a vector database, though that turned out to be mostly unnecessary. At its core, AutoGPT introduced a simple idea. Let GPT run its own process. It's not just prompt and reply, it's think, act, observe, and repeat. That feedback loop, It's now the foundation of how most AI agents work today. Real-world use cases by 2025. By 2025, some real-world pilots have appeared for autonomous AI agents. First up, DevOps and IT automation. This is one of the more practical use cases right now. IBM launched a tool called Ask IM to automate basic IT tasks. AWS introduced Strands, an open SDK for building agents that can manage cloud infrastructure. Databricks has something called AgentBricks for data pipelines. So instead of having a human check server logs or deploy updates, an agent can handle it automatically. Though to be clear, most companies still keep these agents on a leash. Read-only access or human sign-off for anything serious. But the pilots are definitely out there. Then there's task planning and productivity, where agents are starting to act like digital assistants. Basic versions can already schedule meetings, clean up your inbox, and generate to-do lists. Some wellness apps even use agents to suggest workouts or set reminders based on your goals. Inside companies, agents are being tested as digital coworkers, handling customer support tickets end-to-end or acting as research assistants. These are early days though. Most agents still need oversight for anything beyond structured, repetitive work. Now, when it comes to personal assistants, we're seeing the early versions take shape. By 2025, some agents can manage your calendar, draft simple emails, and keep you on schedule without you constantly prompting them. Ask one to plan a vacation, and it can book your flights, hotels, and even recommend restaurants, with your approval, of course. This goes beyond chatbots. These agents can actually do things. A few companies are even demoing multi-agent setups, where one handles travel, another handles dining, and a manager agent keeps them on track. The most promising progress, though, might be in software development. GitHub Copilot now has an agent mode. It can refactor code, write unit tests, and even do basic PR reviews on its own. One to keep an eye out for is Devin, released in 2024 by Cognition. It's designed to be an AI junior developer that takes a feature request, writes the code, and tests it. In early benchmarks, it completed about 14% of tasks fully independently. Not perfect, but a huge leap from just getting code suggestions. Tools like GPT Engineer aim to go even further, generating entire apps from plain English descriptions. Then we've got IoT and robotics. This is where things get a little more sci-fi. In factories, agents monitor sensor data and schedule repairs before machines fail. In smart homes, they could manage heating, lights, or security. Imagine telling an agent, "Keep my plants alive," and it checks soil sensors and waters them automatically, or orders help if needed. A lot of this is still R&D, but the direction is clear. Devices are getting smarter, and agents are starting to manage them with goal-driven logic. Finally, other industries are running their own experiments. In finance, agents are being tested for auto-generating reports or managing portfolios. In healthcare, they're used to transcribe doctor's notes or update medical records. Legal teams are experimenting with agents that can draft basic contracts or scan documents for key clauses. Deloitte estimates that by the end of 2025, about 25% of companies using generative AI will have some kind of agent pilot running. And that number is only going to grow. It's important to stay grounded. The hype around agents has been enormous, but the reality is a little bit more subtle. So what's actually working? And what still feels like science fiction? They're great at clearly defined multi-step tasks, especially ones that involve collecting data, making simple decisions, and moving through a process. Think automating workflows, handling repetitive tasks, or piecing together simple coding jobs. A lot of early success stories come from this kind of digital duct tape, connecting APIs, scraping data, and stitching tools together. What really helps is tool integration. Features like OpenAI's function calling let agents fetch live data or execute real code. When they're operating in a narrow domain and given clear guardrails, they can genuinely save time and cut down on busy work. But here's the flip side. Once you push beyond those tight boundaries, things get messy. In real-world testing, agents often fall short of the hype. Outside of polished demos, many users found that a good old ChatGPT prompt was actually more reliable for complex tasks. Why? Because agents tend to hallucinate facts, get stuck in loops, or even take actions that aren't safe. One coding benchmark showed an agent solving just 14% of a task start to finish. And a user summed it up best. Running AutoGPT felt like watching a toddler. full of energy but absolutely in need of supervision. And yes, they all go off the rails. There are stories of agents getting stuck on the same subtask forever, or even worse, taking actions they shouldn't. One bot rebooted a server unnecessarily after misreading an error. That's why every serious deployment includes safety checks, logs, human sign-offs, sandboxed environments. Because left unchecked, these agents can make mistakes that range from silly to damaging. At the core, a lot of this comes down to reliability. Agents inherit the same flaws as large language models. They don't really understand cause and effect. That means their reasoning can fall apart on longer, more complicated tasks. Open-ended goals like make me money or win this strategy game usually lead to chaos. They do best with specific objectives and clear definitions of success. And even then, they still need prompt engineering and human review. There are also big questions still hanging in the air. How do we give agents better memory so they stop repeating themselves or forgetting what they just did? How do we make them safer so they don't take harmful actions or hallucinate critical details? And how do we measure their performance in a consistent way? Researchers are working on it. New benchmarks like Agent Bench are emerging. There are tools for tracing decisions, auditing behavior, and even coordinating multiple agents at once. But that brings its own problems. Sometimes agents in a team just end up amplifying each other's mistakes. And beyond all of this is the broader issue of AI alignment. Things like bias, transparency, job displacement. They don't go away just because an AI is now autonomous. If anything, they get more urgent. So yes, autonomous agents are exciting, but they're not magic. Not yet. In short, today's agents are promising, but imperfect. Many pundits proclaim the age of agents is here. Even Netflix CEO joked that they'll replace software developers. But experts caution, don't fall for the hype matrix. We're still in an exploratory phase. The smart move is to pilot carefully, applying agents where they truly help, and monitoring them very closely. Conclusion: autonomous agents aren't magic, but they are exciting tools. The next few years will tell how far they can really go. Will we end up with truly smart digital assistants like Jarvis? Maybe someday. But for now, even a partially reliable, goal-driven GPT is a big step beyond chatting. As you go about your day, expect to see more of these always-on AI assistants popping up, handling the emails you forget, planning the code you requested, or even watering those plants. Just remember, behind the scenes, it's a think-act loop powered by GPT-4 and a lot of code. And yes, like any intern, it might need a gentle nudge and a coffee break from time to time. If you found this useful, hit the like button so we know, and subscribe to catch the next deep dive when it drops. See you in the next one.